Da, da. Hey, welcome to the
Swell of music. Ta da da da. Welcome.
That's right. Welcome to the MMA Vivisection. I'm Zane Simon. I'm joined by Connor Rubish, my esteemed co-host. We are here to talk about UFC UFC Fight Night, Hendricks versus Thompson. It's
82,
supposed to be
I think it is.
hmm?
Fight Night 82 it is now, I think.
Fight Night 82, Fight Night Hendricks Thompson, Fight Night Vegas, Fight Night not UFC 196. Which was supposed to be headlined, of course, by Fabricio Verdum versus Cain Velasquez, and we are now hearing that not only do we know, of course, that fight isn't happening, and that Verdum versus Miocic isn't happening, but that they are actually rebooking Verdum Miocic and not Verdum Velasquez.
Good precedent, by the way, to turn this into a fight night event, because not only do we still get to see the fights that we were expecting to see, without having to buy a pay-per-view. I won't say free because, of course, we pay for cable and we have to watch commercials. But also, they need to get these guys fights. We've had enough people complaining about not getting the contracted amount of fights lately. So these guys are still going to get the chance to work and get paid, which is good.
Yeah, it's great. And I mean, if this were 2014, this would be a pay-per-view still.
Yeah.
Like, they would never have canceled. They might have canceled it, but even I don't think they would have. They would have just, they put DJ versus Carriazo on pay-per-view. They would be willing to make you pay for Hendricks.
But even cancellation, if it was like a Jones Henderson, 151 recap, a repeat, then even in that case, it wouldn't be good for anyone but the UFC. It would save them money, but all of these guys, this is their job.
Yeah, it's much better for fighters. It's better for fans this way, and it's fine. It's a decision that is favorable to absolutely everyone except potentially the UFC.
And it's hard to imagine them still not making money on this.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's like, they made a mistake or they're putting themselves in it too, but they are putting fans and fighters first on this. I'm willing to say that. I think this was a decision that is in the best interest of everyone except potentially them.
Yes, it's admirable.
Yeah, it is. We should just start off recognizing that, because this card's going to be otherwise less admirable.
I don't hate this card, actually. I think when I look at this card, it's one of those ones where I like every fight. Pretty much. I like almost every single fight. I won't say every, but almost every single fight is really solid and interesting. But like almost nothing jumps out as being amazing, where I'm like, oh, I'm watching this to see so-and-so and so-and-so fight. But I have no issues with the vast majority of this card.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's, it's just god-awful. It's just totally like, it's not a fight that anybody's going to look at and recognize,
It's totally acceptable as an impromptu fight night card.
Yep.
It is exactly the kind of card that you would say, yeah, this is not a pay-per-view.
Yeah, it is. And it should be fun. I mean, we have weird standards, but it should be fun enough for us, certainly. And I expect if you're along for the ride and you're willing to sit, I just wish, if you're willing to sit through a 6-fight main card on FS1, it'll be fun. That's the only thing I'm still a little unhappy about, is that it was supposed to be a 4-fight fight pass card, and that would have been gorgeous.
Yeah, well, prepare yourself to stay up until 3 a.m. watching this.
I'm West Coast, so I don't have to worry about any of that. I just have to live tweet.
It'll be a rare late night for you over there on the West Coast. You'll have to stay up till midnight.
That's right. All right, so let's jump straight into this thing with Artem Lobov versus Alex White.
Well, it's a good way to start off the card, because this should be a ridiculous knockdown, drag-out brawl. Artem Lobov, I think of him like a brawler. I think he thinks of himself as a counterpuncher. He has a one counterpunch, and it's the same step back cross that Conor McGregor uses for obvious reasons, because he's Conor McGregor's training partner. The more I actually look at Artem Lobov, like, he's really easy to be like, oh, he doesn't belong in the UFC and so on and so forth. He's actually got a really credible resume for a guy who I thought, given the number of fights on his resume, that he had been fighting for a while. He's only been doing this for like 4 years. And he's got 24 fights, which is pretty crazy. He's been doing it since 2010 as a professional. So 6 years, 5.5, and he's got 24 fights, which is nuts. And he's lost an awful lot. He's got a 50-50 record, but he's also beaten some pretty credible regional guys. He's really durable. He seems to hit fairly hard, though he's certainly not the knockout machine he appeared to be on The Ultimate Fighter. And he is, for some reason, despite the fact that SBG Ireland is purportedly a jiu-jitsu gym, with John Kavanagh being a jiu-jitsu guy, he is really susceptible to grappling. But Alex White's probably not going to grapple him, because Alex White is a guy with a boxing background who doesn't fight like you would expect a boxer to fight. It's like spinning back fists, 300 strikes per minute, just like pumping off piston-like punches from both hands, stepping out of stance, always coming forward, getting countered, and not giving a damn.
He's the Sean O'Connell of featherweight.
I think he's even more reckless than Sean O'Connell. Like, Sean O'Connell will, like, go down and jab the body. He mostly stays in an orthodox stance. Alex White is just, like, running into punches without a care. And it's not a great recipe for success, but it makes him a pretty tough matchup. So I think we're in for a really close fight with both guys getting hurt and both guys being forced to swing at each other like crazy. And I think Alex White wins a split decision.
Wow. I'm not you know what? I'm there 99% of the way, but I'm not following you to the end of that.
Okay.
Thing with Alex White is that to win, he tends to have to be able to out-punch people. And I don't think he out-punches Lobov. Lobov can win without out-punching people. Like, he has other avenues to go, and he hits hard enough, and he's got a good enough chin to take a licking. And
statistically speaking, Alex White is the harder puncher.
Yeah, but
40% of wins by KO.
Yeah, I know. But statistically speaking, he's also faced a way lower level of competition.
Yes, very true.
So I understand that, and it's just like, I think this is a fight that will predominantly take place in the pocket. Like, nobody is stepping out, and nobody is going to be doing anything really advanced here. Alex White is more than happy to just sit in front of you and brawl away, and so is Artem Lobov. Neither guy really wants the fight anywhere else. And I just don't think that Alex White, like, Artem Lobov he's way lower output than he should be for the style he has. And he's way more confident in his defense than he has any right to be.
Yes.
Like, way more. He's just kind of like, he reminds me of Chris Beal in that way.
Yeah.
A lot, where it's just like, you don't punch that much and you don't get out of the way that well, but you think you punch great and you think you are unhittable.
Yeah, well, you got to respect it, right? Like, just hanging out with Conor McGregor has given him this insane, unwarranted level of self-confidence.
Indeed. It is really kind of crazy. But I think in this case, he will have an opponent that is just also kind of a technical mess and is willing to be right in front of him.
It should be awesome to watch.
It should be. It should be. I am looking forward to it. I'm way, way, way more looking forward to this than the next fight. Like, if I'm going to watch a sloppy brawl, this is the kind of sloppy brawl I want, where two guys have very known and honed sloppy games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are guys who have spent some time putting the ridiculous slop in their game for very particular reasons. And that makes it a fun fight to watch. And I'm picking Lobov. I just think that White is too wild in the pocket and too entirely, like, not because Lobov is unconcerned with his defense when he should be. White doesn't even recognize that, like, defense is a thing that should happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Opponent's offense is just a thing to be punched through and around for Alex.
Yeah. Exactly. Lobov, at least, he recognizes that he should be defensive. It's just his method of defense is to put his hands down and lean back a little and then be like, yeah, I got out of the way.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, Lobov is the slight favorite. in the odds, minus 135 down to minus 150. Alex White, the underdog, plus 133 down to plus 105. I'm really okay with these odds being dead even.
Yeah.
I wouldn't bet on this fight in any way. I think it's totally reasonable to see it going to a split decision for either guy.
Yeah. Or for either guy to get a finish. Like,
yeah,
they've both been hurt in the past. Both of them are willing to throw. You know, and Alex White actually has 5 submissions, so it wouldn't be completely out of the question for him to
we have seen his ground game in the UFC.
Okay, have we seen Artem Lobov's ground game? I mean, the best you can say about him is that he didn't get submitted by Ryan Hall. But he didn't come close to out grappling him.
Yeah, but not getting submitted by Ryan Hall is actually like...
Yeah. I think I get the sense that White's submission game is probably like knock you down and then jump on a choke or something like that.
It's knock you down and like oil you and then jump on a choke. And if in that like oiled wrestling slip and slide festival he happens to actually submit you in there, then he would have been submitted.
You think Alex White has like a carafe of oil with him to prepare his opponent for a sloppy grappling exchange?
It's like he's got like the oil version of pocket sand.
Blah! Just a handful of olive oil. Yeah, that's good.
All right.
Oh, Jesus.
So on that note, we are now moving on to Mickey Gall versus Mike Jackson. And I will say up front that I have watched tape on neither of these two. And I'm not going to. I'm not going to write up a welcome to the UFC article on them. I am not going to pay attention to this other than the fact that Gall is promised a shot at CM Punk if he wins, because I frankly do not believe that the UFC is invested in either of these fighters. I don't think that they're going to carry either guy if they lose. I assume they're both going to get cut, or they'll get cut. And if Mickey Gall does not beat CM Punk, I assume he gets cut. And if he does beat CM Punk and beats Mike Jackson, I assume he gets cut after his next 1 or 2 losses. So it is very hard to be invested in two fighters that I believe quite strongly that the UFC is as absolutely disinterested in as they can be.
Mm-hmm.
So my pick is, I'm going to go with the chaos pick and hope Mike Jackson wins this.
Sure. Yeah. It's basically essentially at a certain point, it's guesswork.
Yep.
I have seen very little footage of Mickey Gall because all there is to look at is what was on Looking for a Fight, which is like a couple sloppy punches, a takedown, I think off of a caught kick, and then a back take, and against a guy who had no business fighting in general. So it's not like it was an impressive opponent to beat. It was fine. You know, he's 1-0. Like, that's what you should be doing when you're 1-0, is just going out there and getting experience. Mike Jackson is officially 0-0 as a pro. I think his amateur record may be 11-10, because that's what the UFC lists his pro record as being. Quite duplicitously, they list his record as 11-10, even though he's never fought as a pro. He's had kickboxing and boxing experience, so maybe those numbers are mixed up in there. I've seen one MMA fight of his, and it was a fight in which he outboxed his opponent pretty well, showed a good jab, good left hook, fairly decent movement, nice countering ability, but the guy didn't go for one takedown. And obviously the question here is, does Mickey Gall take down this boxer successfully, or does Mike Jackson not? I think Mike Jackson does have more combat sports experience. He's a little older. He seems pretty confident in himself. So, like I said, it's guesswork, but Mike Jackson by TKO, why not? There's no reason to really expect either guy to win here. That's the thing. And Mike Jackson's the first guy since James Toney to debut in the UFC with no professional fights. And I think he is the only guy other than James Toney to debut in the UFC with no Ultimate Fighter experience, probably since before the Zuffa era. So it's not exactly great company that he's keeping. I'm not really up on this whole idea that the UFC is now a place where 0-0 fighters can go. And that's nothing against either of these guys. You know, Mickey Gall seems like he could be fun. Mike Jackson seems like a great guy. He does MMA journalism in the Houston area, seems very charismatic. He knows the sport. It's a cool guy. But, you know, I don't really I didn't buy Fight Pass so I could watch debuting professionals. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you don't see like, you know, you barely see debuting pros on like a Fight Nights undercard
Yeah.
in Russia. You know?
Yeah, so it's a little dissatisfying, but it's not really even worth that much discussion, to be honest.
No. Interesting to note, and I really do not think I have no idea what the hell this is, but uh the underground mixedmartialarts.com, which is actually like the official record repository for like the ABC for MMA,
Mhm.
has him listed at 15-10.
Mike Jackson
Yeah, and
as a pro.
I think so. Like it because they have an amateur record here too, of 1-3 as an amateur, and then they have a pretty lengthy record. I mean, they're saying, let me see. I gotta check something here because include the fight that I am really not sure of at all. Yeah, they're saying that, and you know what? I think they must have got him confused with someone else. No, I don't know. Like, because there's a Mike Jackson here over on, yeah, on Sherdog that is listed at 11-10.
Do you think the UFC put the wrong Mike Jackson's record on their
I
site?
think mixedmartialarts.com has the wrong Mike Jackson because they haven't listed as fighting what's his name up here, Mickey Gall. Like he's going to fight Mickey Gall.
For what it's worth, Mike Jackson himself has said that he's debuting. So
Yeah. So because there's another Mike Jackson who fights out of CM Systems and is listed on Sherdog as 11-10, who lost to Warley Alves in Jungle Fight and it has fought Daniel Roberts and Brian
he
Foster.
did a lot of University of MMA fights. Is that the one?
Yeah, he's freestyle fighting. I don't know. No. Anyway, the point being, I don't know. Does the UFC not know who this guy is?
That's the funny thing. They just like the Legacy FC president's like, hey, this guy's cool. And they're like, whatever. Just put him in there. Which I think will be hilarious if he does beat Mickey Gall, because obviously, based on looking for a fight, they're hoping to get Mickey Gall a win here. And I don't think Mike Jackson will play to that script willingly.
Yeah, I really entirely hope that Mike Jackson beats him. He on the odds, Gall is a heavy favorite with minus 475 down to minus 700.
Why?
I don't know. I have no idea. I have
just because of the show?
I think either just because of the show and people are betting on like, or just the idea that the UFC knows what they want and so they're setting up what they want.
They have this idea that it may in fact be underhanded.
Or like, yeah, fans have an idea that it's like they wouldn't book this fight for this guy if they weren't sure he could win it.
Yeah, well, maybe they're smarter than we are.
Maybe. Jackson is the underdog plus 350 up to plus 472. At that point, I would throw some money on Mike Jackson.
Can't go wrong if it's a little bit.
A 1-0 pro fighter who nobody is talking about, who appears to have no like incredible combat sports background to draw on, is about the most unreliable fighter on the face of the planet to pick up a consistent win.
Mm-hmm. Who knows?
Just
Analysis.
how it is. All right. So leaving that behind, Noad, Lahat, Diego Rivas. I'll give you. You know what? Go with this one because wait. Yeah, it's your turn anyway. So what the fuck am I talking about?
I'll take it. Diego Rivas, not very good. That's just all there is to say about it. He's not. He's and you know he's also very inexperienced, so he could very well get better. But he is kind of a big right hand, a long distance between himself and his opponent when it doesn't really suit him, and some fairly solid looking fundamental grappling on the ground. and not much there. There's nothing really spectacular or really promising about Rivas, and that's pretty much the exact opposite of his opponent. Noad Lahat was as a brown belt a world no-gi jiu-jitsu champion. I believe he is now coaching jiu-jitsu over at AKA. He is at AKA, which is injuries and misunderstandings about their fighters' ability to withstand hard training aside, a very solid camp, a very solid team. And Lahat is a fairly good striker. I think he's getting better in that realm. He's a solid wrestler, obviously a good submission grappler. This is clearly a fight meant to get him a win, or to get Rivas out of his contract. I don't know what's going on here, but Lahat seems like an easy pick.
Yeah, I mean, from rewatching some tape on Rivas, you see a fighter who, when he gets pressured, really does not have a clear idea of what to do. He tends to either throw a spinning strike to try and scare his opponent off, or just back straight up and gets pushed all the way back into the cage.
Like, they're both kind of outfighters in the range they keep in, but Lahat is an outfighter because he's tactically minded. He knows he's quick. He knows he can mix up his takedowns and his punches. Rivas is an outfighter because he does not know how to fight at any other range, because it's too much of a risk to stand near enough to be punched.
Yeah. And and Rivas just otherwise just kind of throws out strikes one at a time. It's just like, okay, here's a right hand, here's a low kick, whatever I'm thinking at the moment to just kind of keep up some sort of output. And Lahat, he's a bit mechanical in his striking, or he was. Like, that was certainly what got him caught against Godofredo Pepe, is that he was just kind of going through the motions a little too much rather than actually responding to the fighter in front of him. But beyond that, we've seen, both against Seiler and Backstrom, and especially against Backstrom, he was able to, to put together a lot more of his game.
Yeah.
In that Backstrom fight, he lit Backstrom up pretty well. He looked like a much more comfortable fighter, especially a more comfortable fighter in the pocket. He really figured out that Backstrom's boxing game is bad enough, and he keeps his hands low, and he keeps his head high enough that if Lahat just slipped right into the pocket with a combination, he could catch him hard over and over again. And he's a really slick, solid ground grappler, really strong fighter everywhere, no major holes. So yeah, it's hard to see Rivas with a way to win this fight. Odds are not nearly as long as they should be, considering the Gall Jackson odds. Lahat is a minus 300 to minus 330 or 370 favorite. Rivas plus 274 down to plus 225.
I think Lahat's a great bet at those odds.
Yeah, Lahat is almost surely. It seems like a really fair lock to win this fight.
Yeah.
And maybe even finish it. So, that brings us to Ray Borg, Justin Scoggins, and this is a hell of a good fight. And I'm really, in some ways, I'm very sure about some things about it, and in other ways, I'm very unsure about some things about it. I was arguing with Pat about this on Twitter the other night, and we both ended up, I think, feeling a little more uncertain afterward.
Yeah.
That, like, the big thing here is that I am fairly sure that if Justin Scoggins can fight a really smart pot-shotting outfight where he just stays on the outside, throws out kicks, throws out solid combinations, does his unusual kicking style, darts in for the occasional combination and gets right back out, that he can beat Borg, because Borg's stand-up is really rudimentary at the moment. He's mostly a kicker, and he's really not he hasn't shown himself to be an especially dangerous kicker. Like, he does it, and it's okay. It's enough to keep him in a fight, but it's not enough to get him ahead of anything. And Scoggins is a pretty decent kickboxer. He's not as dominating there as it looked like he would be when he came up from the regionals, but he's decent. However, Scoggins also tends to be at his best when he can out-wrestle his opponent. when he can take them down, when he can get on top of them and outwork them and land ground and pound and do all sorts of stuff like that. And he likes to do it. He likes to mix everything together and do everything. And if he does that against Borg, I have a severe feeling of dread that Borg is just going to teleport to his back and submit him and make him part of the collective. And so my only inkling here that is not what will happen is that Scoggins fought a really good, solid, smart fight against Josh Sampo, but where he stayed upright and did that pot-shotting distance game plan. But Sampo is also a lot slower than Borg,
Yeah.
and Scoggins' footwork and some of the things he does, the way he comes in, he likes to come in with his hands down and then throw combinations from his hips, and he tries to come in at unusual angles, and he leaves himself open to be hit by fast fighters. And when he gets hit, he starts wrestling.
Yeah.
And Borg is just so fast. I just see that at some point this is going to have to hit the ground, and I think it's probably going to hit the ground often enough that Borg is going to take a decision. So I'm picking Ray Borg by decision.
Yeah, I think the same as you. I think Scoggins is the better striker, but I think and this is an idea that was suggested about Sage Northcutt a little while ago by a very smart guy named Schwan Humes, who every MMA person should follow on Twitter. Very knows what he's talking about. And he was talking about how Northcutt is like all transitions. He really understands innately, not even understands, he feels what to do when it's right to do it. And that the depth of his technical skill is actually not that great. And I think Scoggins is kind of similar. He's obviously a little further along technically. He's significantly further along than Northcutt, but I think he really thrives on like the fight being nip tuck, on everything back and forth, really nippy back and forth exchanges. And as long as it's like a scramble going on, Justin Scoggins is an animal. But when you tie him down, when you make it so he can only strike, or you make it so he can only fight off of his back, and he's stuck to one position or one phase, he starts to, I think, run out of ideas and starts to get a little desperate. And that happened to him in the Dustin Ortiz fight. Granted, Dustin Ortiz did the same thing to Ray Borg, who is similarly a great transitional fighter. But I think Borg seems to have learned from that. He went and had his own matchup, which kind of mirrors this one in a grappling perspective against John Herrera, and really showed that he can fight smart and just lock somebody down and make them fight the kind of fight he wants them to fight. And I think he can do that to Justin Scoggins. I think Borg is probably the better wrestler when it comes to just technical takedown ability. He's a very smart finisher of his takedowns, cuts lots of angles, has a lot of different ways to get his opponent to the ground. And when it gets there, he is the more patient fighter. He's more happy to sit in half guard and put pressure on you, cross face you, and just wait for you to get desperate if he needs to. He's not going to be jumping on every submission he sees. He's not going to be passing when it's not time to pass. He's happy to transition, but he will also stay one step ahead of you and make you make the first mistake. So I think I agree. I think the fight will go to the ground fairly often. If it doesn't, then Scoggins' chances obviously improve. But even then, I don't think Scoggins can fight and not wrestle that much. I really not sure that he can do that. I think he really innately knows that once the person starts reacting to his striking, he's going to try and wrestle with him. And I think he's going to have to grapple with Borg. When he does, I think eventually he'll get desperate and get caught. So my pick here is a Borg by a third round submission.
The only thing I will say is, and I've heard this from others, I think I even saw him say it once, maybe on Twitter, and like I said, I think there's some example of it in the Sampo fight, is I think Scoggins knows this about himself and is trying to fight it.
Well, that's great, yeah.
Yeah, he's trying to, be a more controlled fighter who doesn't take the fight everywhere because he can, but takes the fight where it needs to go when he should take it there.
It's a tough guy to try and bring that out against, though.
It is, because Borg is fast. Like, Borg is not a good striker. He is not. No. But he is fast enough that he can track you down even while being a bad striker.
Yeah, and he's quick enough and smart enough that he is going to make you react, not think. Yeah. You can't come in against Ray Borg and be like, okay, I'm going to think through everything before I do it. Ray Borg is excellent at making you react and knowing how you're going to react before you do it.
I do think Scoggins is actually probably the better offensive and defensive wrestler slightly, but he's way behind. I don't know about way behind, but Borg is just such a ridiculous grappler when it hits the mat. Like, he's just so he has such an innate, I don't even know that he's got a deep technical game, but he has such an innate understanding of how to grapple.
Yeah.
So it should be a hell of a fun fight, though. I am expecting it to be
matchup.
Yeah. I expect it to be a 15-minute scramble back and forth. Just great fight. Odds on it are Ray Borg is minus 260 to minus 360. Justin Scoggins plus 220 or 215 up to plus 257. Those odds are a little long.
It's not outrageous, but it does feel a little wide to me.
Yeah, it's a little wide just because Scoggins is better in one place that Borg struggles. Significantly better in one place that Borg struggles. So, should be a great fight. Next up, Derrick Lewis, Damian Grabowski. Take it away.
Well, we know how Derrick Lewis fights. We know that he maybe improved in his last bout with Victor Pesta. Although a lot of the same things that always happened to Derrick Lewis happened in that fight. He looked maybe a little more calm. He didn't freak out and gas instantly. But Pesta is also not a fantastic submission grappler, so maybe Lewis just got lucky and didn't get submitted. And Pesta tired himself out because this is heavyweight, and that happens. Damian Grabowski is the one thing Grabowski really has in his favor here is that he's 20-2 as a professional heavyweight. He's fought good competition, and he's never been KO'd, which is a great thing to have in your favor against Derrick Lewis. Just having durability alone is great against a guy who is as limited as Derrick Lewis. Lewis is really kind of a brawler. Not that he's always going crazy, but he doesn't really have any kind of consistent approach. It's just he's going to try to hit you with something, and he's going to hope that you go to sleep. Damian Grabowski, not always a fighter that lights the world on fire. Gets into long, boring clinch battles. He may really struggle in the UFC with people who push him up against the cage because it's happened a lot in his fights in the much more forgiving M1 ring. But he's a fairly solid takedown artist. He's a fairly solid submission grappler, a good scrambler, even when he does give up position on the ground, and not a bad striker either. He's, everything's just kind of middle of the road, but he's durable. He's got good stamina, and he's calm. And I think all of those things are really heavily in his favor against Derrick Lewis, who seems to lack almost every one of those things in most fights. So I think Grabowski by a late submission or by decision seems about right. And I do not expect it to be a very fun fight.
Yeah, I think of Grabowski as kind of like, and no shade to him, because I think that Oleinik is a pretty actually underrated fighter, but Grabowski's kind of like cut rate Alexei Oleinik.
Sure.
Or it's like he's a decent enough boxer to be respectable there. And then the bulk of his game is really, can he get you to the ground, and then he's going to throw up a submission on you and try to get you out of there.
Yeah, he's like a Oleinik, but without the will to win. It's like Damian Grabowski, he's like a good boxer. You can see him throw combinations, but he'll just do it once in a blue moon. Like, spend so much time in a fight just stalling or being stalled.
The thing with him is that it's like, unfortunately for him, he's not a great range fighter, and he's not really a great clinch fighter.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a good pocket boxer.
Yeah.
And like, when you can't control either other space, you are very rarely, especially at heavyweight, gonna get chances to just be a good, like, really let your hands go in the pocket right in front of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the thing. It's just like, you have to be able to do something else to like be dangerous at range, or in his case, what he really needs to be is a more dangerous clinch fighter.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to have more clinch options because
Just more
too
aggressive
often,
in the clinch.
yeah, be more aggressive in the clinch because too often, like he gets the fight in that pocket range where he's going to be good and throw hands, and he'll throw a punch or something, and then end up right in the clinch, and or his opponent will just immediately grab him instead of letting him throw strikes, and suddenly he's pressed into the cage and just in this long wearing clinch battle where not much happens. So I don't think Lewis will win this fight, but the big danger here for Grabowski is if he gets takedowns, and I think he will. He has a pretty decent shot and a pretty decent trip and drag game. If he just jumps on aggressive submissions and loses them with Derrick Lewis and gives up vulnerable positions because of it, he could get bombed on.
Yeah,
And
he's a pretty good scrambler, though. He does jump on things weirdly, but he tends to find a way to get back to his feet or get back to the top.
It's true, but Lewis is super dangerous. Like, super, super, super dangerous there. That's my only worry. I still don't think, that's like the puncher's chance in this fight, and Lewis has one. But yeah, I think Grabowski by submission.
It is kind of weird,
Or
like just
decision.
knowing how unremarkable we find Damian Grabowski as a fighter. His record's pretty damn good.
Oh yeah,
he's only lost to Cole Conrad and Marcin Tybura, both really solid fighters. He's beaten some good guys, like as far as regional heavyweight goes, like Gluhov, Kenny Garner, Dave Huckabee, Dion Starring twice. Like those are not bad names for a regional heavyweight.
Yeah, no, it's as good as regional heavyweight record gets, and it shows like the guy that beats him is the bigger, more powerful wrestler.
Sure, yeah.
Like that's what you get in Tybura and Conrad is guys that are just sort of heavyweight whales that will, just drag you down onto the ground and take advantage of your willingness to scramble and give up position and just hold you there and wear on you.
Mm-hmm.
And Derrick Lewis is not that dude. That said, Derrick Lewis also is a better puncher than Garner and Huckabee and a lot of and than pretty much any fighter that he's ever beat, that Grabowski's ever beat. So
has Lewis ever even won a decision?
I don't.
Nope.
No, I don't think so. Let me.
Submission. If it goes to decision, he loses or he gets knocked out. But mostly, he just blows you out of the water.
Yeah, I think I don't think Grabowski's gonna finish him here. He's just not like his game is not. He's good at the power subs. I guess he could get an arm triangle or something, but Lewis is so strong that I feel like Lewis is going to always be able to just muscle out of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Lewis is like the old school MMA dude who can just bench press you off of him and has no idea what he's doing on the ground and never will, but is still not actually as easy to grapple as you think he should be.
Yeah, like Lewis has never lost by submission.
Which is pretty even crazy when he's considering how badly he looks on the ground.
Yeah. So I see this being just Grabowski swallows him up, takes an unexciting decision, but there you have it. Odds on this fight: Derrick Lewis is the underdog, plus 128, down to plus 100. Damian Grabowski, the favorite, minus 130 up to minus 160. That feels just right to me.
Sure.
I hate long heavyweight odds. It's never a division that should have them. So let me see if they have a fight goes to decision odds. Plus 250 on fight goes to decision. Maybe something there.
Not that bad.
Yeah. Not that bad. But with the Derrick Lewis fight saying it's going to go to a decision is like
you can see why they're underdog odds.
Yeah. It's still tough. That brings us to Josh Burkman, KJ Noons. And man, this is a weird fight. A lightweight bout.
Yes, it is. It's a very weird fight.
It's a super weird fight, especially like two guys moving down from welterweight to fight at lightweight. Like that's just seems like such a weird idea to me.
Nunes has been up
You
and
know?
down for a while. Nunes has always drifted in that 160
Yeah,
range. He's
but
kind of a Franklin weight fighter.
I know, but I'm talking about from their last bout. Both these guys fought at welterweight.
Josh Burkman's never been a lightweight, so it's a weird
No.
decision for a guy who just saw the first cracking of his chin in his entire career, and he's like, I know, I'm 35, I'll go down to lightweight. It's a weird, kind of depressing decision to see happen.
Yeah, but KJ Nunes, man, I
I like that. Just every bit of your analysis in this fight is just like frustrated grunts. Like, oh,
yeah, like we know KJ Nunes still has hands. Like they still exist. They're getting a little slower.
they're still attached to his arms, which by last report are still attached to his shoulders.
Yeah, I mean they might be a little slower than they used to be. They might be a little sloppier than they used to be. Certainly in his Crookshank fight with that eye poke, it just felt like he was just kind of winging stuff out there. But against Alex Oliveira, he was able to pretty straightforwardly light Oliveira up on the feet. And but Burkman, when Burkman actually like I don't know, when he actually thinks about it, his boxing is usually the best part of his game.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't seem to think about it that much.
Yeah.
Like he wants to be this super three-dimensional fighter, and as such, he just kind of ends up being a mediocre at everything fighter. Like he's an okay wrestler, offensively and defensively. He can be taken down. He can be stuffed, but he gets takedowns and he can defend them sometimes. He's a decent grappler. He's he's been submitted because he's willing to be aggressive and is a little more open on the ground and tries to athlete out of things, frankly, when he's on the ground, that gets him locked into submissions. But he's not like a horrible submission grappler.
Yeah. Well, you can understand that a lot of his defense on the feet is just being able to take the shot. You take the same mentality to the ground, no matter how tough you are. If you get caught in a choke, it's going to work.
Exactly. And so I feel like, you know what? I got to pick Burkman to beat KJ Nunes because Nunes, it seems so much. It seems like he's at the point now where if the fight is not boxing in the pocket, he just doesn't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that just seems to be the KJ Nunes we have these days. Is like, are you not going to stand right in front of me and just throw hands? I'm not interested in this fight. Then, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be here. That's not what I signed up for. I signed up for you and me in a small gloves boxing match, toe to toe. That's it. And Burkman is really not that fighter. Burkman likes to move around a lot. He likes to try to be elusive. And I feel like if he shoots in on Nunes at this point, he'll get Nunes down because Nunes will just say, fuck it. You know what? I'm not here to wrestle. So you want to wrestle me? Fine. Okay. You put a submission on me? Great. I'll tap. Let's go home.
Yeah, KJ Nunes is kind of the less whiny Rampage Jackson of the welterweight / lightweight division. Like it's really offensive to him that people would try to wrestle him, and that manifests itself in just a career-long struggle with developing any kind of counter grappling. Like which is to his credit, it's not like KJ Nunes is getting submitted every week. He's not like a fish out of water on the ground. It's like he's just like. It just loses all zest for the fight.
Yep.
The Josh Thompson fight really comes to mind. Like he was so tangibly upset that he had been out wrestled that Josh Thompson felt compelled to apologize. No, Josh, that's what you do to win a fight. You should be happy. Don't let KJ sour your victory just because he thought he was coming to box. So yeah, I mean, Josh Burkman, for all that you said about, and I agree about trying to be more well-rounded than is good for him, he is more well-rounded than KJ Nunes. He can wrestle. He can grapple and go for submissions. He's got a really respectable guillotine, though. Since KJ Nunes won't be shooting for takedowns on him, I'm not sure that'll actually be an option. And he's just kind of weirdly inconsistent, Josh Burkman. But it's all just flashes of brilliance with him. You know, choking out John Fitch. I don't care if John Fitch is on the downslide. John Fitch is not an easy man to choke out. BJ Penn couldn't choke out John Fitch, and he had the choke in. So, you know, that shows Josh Burkman is good at that. You watch him throwing these great counterpunch combinations, power, accuracy, precision, efficiency, looks really good. You show him moving around, really light in his feet, nice footwork, but it's just like 20 seconds a round of this kind of stuff. And mostly it's him looking like he kind of doesn't know what to do. And yeah, it worries me that he gets knocked out for the first time in his career, 35 years old, and suddenly decides that draining 15 more pounds of water out of his body is the solution. So, you know, it wouldn't really shock me if KJ Noons knocked him out. That's kind of my fear in this fight. But because I like Josh Burkman as a fighter, but you gotta feel at this point, you got to get in the benefit of the doubt and assume that it's still his fight to lose. So I think Josh Burkman probably takes a decision.
Yeah, I'd pick him by first round, second round submission. I just think like the Alex Oliveira fight for me with Noons just stands out so starkly, where it's like you're beating this guy handily, and he goes in for one takedown, works hard enough for it to get it, and you're just like, okay, done. That's it. Fine.
Submit me. I'm ready to leave.
And that just, I feel like that's where Noons is right now. Like I feel like it's more than ever that way.
What is Noons' contract like, do you think? He can't be making that much money from his Strikeforce contract because he's still around.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't. I don't know. I don't know what to think of Noons. And Burkman is the ultimate, like, he's obviously a really good athlete. Like, top 15 level athlete. I would, feel reasonable saying. Not top 5, but top 15. He's a lot like what's his name? The guy that looks a lot like him, welterweight, fought Mike Pierce just last time.
I don't know.
Oh God, Ryan LaFleur, a lot like Ryan LaFleur.
Sure.
Like Ryan LaFleur is Burkman 2.0, and it's that like he's a good athlete, but he's also the ultimate. I want to just feel the fighter. Like I'm just gonna go out there with no plan and see what happens, and I'll do what I feel. And so often, like he's not Anderson Silva. Like Anderson Silva can do that, and even Anderson Silva actually had a pretty good plan in mind when you actually watch.
Yeah, and I think Burkman is really kind of a defined counter striker. I think he's really good when he does that, but he just doesn't know how to enhance that game. It's like you give him a chance to land these counter punches and to time you coming in, or he's just kind of floating around. It's like, I know I'll do a weird sidekick. I'll throw a flying knee. I'll come after you really aggressively with my hands down. Okay, I'm gonna wait and counter. Like the Patrick Cote fight was fun, mostly because Josh Burkman was just making crucial mistakes all over the place. Just like trying everything and doing very little of it successfully, but still hanging in the fight against a surging Patrick Cote. So that is a credit to his fight abilities as a fighter, his natural ability.
Yeah. So I got to give Burkman it. I got to give it to Burkman here. I just think that Noons will give him the counter opportunities, and Noons, I don't know. I don't feel like he wants to be. I don't feel like he wants to be doing this. Frankly, that's just how it seems.
He's getting paid to get submitted, so why not?
Yeah. That brings us to that is the end of the prelims. Fox Sports 1 prelim card, and that brings us to a welterweight bout: Mike Pyle versus Sean Spencer. Oh wait, no, odds. Fuck. Josh Burkman is the favorite, -165 up to -190. KJ Noons, the underdog, +153 down to +135. That seems actually a little close, but
yeah, I was
mostly
thinking it could be a little longer than that, but who cares, really?
Yeah. All right, and that brings us to Mike Pyle, Sean Spencer. Dial it up.
Another weird fight. I really like this fight. It wasn't until I started watching footage on him to prepare that I realized how much I kind of missed Sean Spencer. He's been out with injury for a while. He's a fun fighter, man. He's
Mhm.
He's a good technical boxer. He's not super powerful, but he still finds a way to hurt a lot of the people that he fights. He doesn't. He's like chronically without punching power, like a Michael Bisping type. But
Mhm.
Cahal Pendred, Alex Garcia, he still is rattling people with punches when he fights him. He's got good timing, good angles. He catches people off balance. Good counter wrestler. I just like him, and I think he's like a well designed fighter. His style makes sense in a lot of ways. It's fun to watch. Mike Pyle is kind of the opposite, like a weird, bizarre, mixed bag who is just like one of the most dangerous opportunists in the game. Super gritty, never backs down. I mean, Mike Pyle came this close to submitting Colby Covington at the end of that fight, and he lost every second of that fight except for when he was just about winning it. And
Mhm.
that kind of sums up his style. He's really dangerous when he's dangerous, and he doesn't have to be doing well to be dangerous. He doesn't need confidence or momentum. In fact, he may be even more dangerous when he's behind, and he knows it because he starts really zeroing in on these opportunities. So that makes this a fun fight. Sean Spencer is not likely to blow Mike Pyle's doors off in the first round, which, if you look through his record, I think I have the numbers here actually. Also, I forgot to make a joke when we did the Ray Borg thing. I was going to say Ray Borg wins this fight 7 of 9 times, and I forgot. Um,
Oh
it's
shit!
a Borg pun I haven't heard used before, and I missed the opportunity.
We got to start the whole show over. Damn it!
Okay, everyone, the 29 people who are watching right now, stick around. We really want you to
Yeah.
hear that joke in context.
All right. Artem Lobov, Alex White.
What was I saying about Mike Pyle? He's the vast majority. I have the numbers around here somewhere, but the vast majority of his losses are KOs, and almost every single one of those is a first round KO. And I don't think Sean Spencer will do that to him, but I do think Sean
Mhm.
Spencer is good enough to hurt him. Um, yeah, it's a weird fight. Like I could see Mike Pyle winning, but I got to go with Sean Spencer. And I kind of think we're nearing the point where Mike Pyle is 40 years old. He's not going to be able to keep taking punishment. He's been getting knocked out more easily lately than he was early in his career, I think. So I kind of think this might be the beginning of a new era in which Mike Pyle is not just fragile in the beginning of a fight, but actually hurtable throughout the contest. So I'm going with Spencer by second round TKO.
Yeah, I mean, Pyle's been fighting too. I mean, not only is he 40, he's been fighting since 1999.
Yeah.
So we are entering year 17 of Mike Pyle's career.
Which is crazy, and you have to give him credit because he still looks pretty good.
Yeah, he still looks very much like the same fighter,
Yeah.
but Spencer is just. Yeah, I gotta agree. I think Spencer. The big thing for me is that I think Spencer has been working to find power.
Hmm.
Like I think that that's something he's actually working on and trying for. I don't know how successful it'll be for him long term. It certainly is something that Bisping has dabbled with over the years and has taken him. He's off and on tried it on and found limited, if any, success with it. Um, but I think especially like in that Cathal Pendred fight, I think part of the reason he hurt him was that he at times was just like, okay, I'm just gonna try and sit down in front of you and throw a combination and sit on it.
Yeah.
And in part, I also think that's kind of why he lost. Is because rather than keeping up a good pace and staying busy and staying on him, he just tried to sit and got caught up in grappling in like cage grappling battles too much. But a lot of people also think that that was a terrible, god awful decision. So
I'm
yeah,
one of
you
them. Yeah.
included.
I think it was one of the worst robberies we've ever seen in MMA.
Yeah, and either way, I'm not. I think we're at the point though that we should probably stop having a ton of faith in Mike Pyle, even with like him being close to beating Covington. Covington's a pretty limited fighter. Like that is a fight that a guy like Pyle is very able to survive because Covington is not actually going to do that many things. And so if you're a smart veteran fighter, you can say, okay, well, I know exactly what he's going to try to do here. I know how to stop this from happening.
And he's not going to finish me, so I have time to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Covington's wins have all either been submissions or submissions via punches. So he's not a fighter that's just like packing this absurd power that knocks people out. He's sort of getting on top of them and overwhelming them with pressure. And if you're a veteran like Pyle, you can say, okay, well, I know how to survive pressure and did do pretty well with it. And Spencer is also a fighter that's going to overwhelm you with pressure, but he's going to do it with punches rather than on the ground. And grappling is usually something where, as fighters get older, they're better able to survive as grapplers. The muscle memory works a little better when you're actually grabbing onto somebody and can hold them, rather than when you're in open space trying to judge timing and distance and speed. So, yeah, I got to take Spencer too, and I think it's not unreasonable to expect Spencer to actually get a finish in this fight.
Two things I forgot to mention that I think are relevant here. One is Spencer's durability. He has been in there with some hard hitters. He got rocked really badly in the Alex Garcia fight. He took some clean shots in his Yuri Villafort fight. He's always been really capable, not only good defensively, but when he does get hit, he doesn't get hurt easily. So the chances of Pyle having like a gigantic knee or something that finishes him are not that great. Two, we're actually probably about to see Sean Spencer, provided he can keep from getting injured, entering the prime of his career. He's only been fighting since 2009, and he's only 28.
Yeah.
And so I think we'll probably start to see him actually come into his own, while Mike Pyle is so far on the other end of that spectrum that we're really like just waiting for it to fall apart.
Within the next fight or two, you expect to see Spencer click.
Yes.
How good that click is, how big a difference it is, I'm not sure. But usually somewhere right in this range, you see a fighter just come out and they put on a performance, they're like, whoa, I did not expect to see that coming.
Yeah.
And this would be about the time to see it, and he's got the kind of opponent that could very well give it to him, who's going to be aggressive and who's going to be in front of him, who's going to be giving him opportunities, and who is really getting over the hill. I mean, I hate to say it, but like it 33 isn't old, but 40, you're starting to get to the point where everybody's got to be like, okay, you know what, you're getting up
there. Yeah, we can't pretend that you're still in your prime anymore.
Yeah. So Spencer is the favorite, minus 162 up to minus 185. Mike Pyle, the underdog, plus 135 up to plus 158. And I should also say on that note, if Mike Pyle wins this fight, I will be pretty impressed and surprised.
Oh yeah.
Like that would be a reasonable shock to me. I think those odds are too close, frankly. Not way too close, but I think up into the 200s would be reasonable.
I think what was Spencer at? He's still around 160. I think Spencer's probably the best value on this card, to be honest. He strikes the best balance between winning, likelihood of winning, and favorable odds. Like minus 160, you can make a tidy profit on that without too much risk.
I was gonna say, what about the next fight? And then I looked at the odds for the next fight, and I was like, oh god, everybody got onto that train, didn't they?
Yeah, Misha Cirkunov, and also sneakily dangerous fight. This one.
Yeah. So that brings us to our next bout: Misha Cirkunov, Alex Nicholson. I believe it's my lead, and man, I feel for Alex Nicholson because he's getting worked, and you know what? He's a tough dude. He's a good athlete. Like, he's a better athlete than he's gonna get credit for. But the technique is not there. He's one of the most inexperienced fighters in the UFC. Like, I was going through this because I've been meaning to write an op-ed since Sage Northcutt lost about basically how inexperienced fighters are largely not good, and that shouldn't be a big surprise to any of us that inexperienced fighters are not good. And looking at all of the least experienced fighters in the UFC, and Nicholson is like top of the list. He is as inexperienced as anyone that they have right now. Been fighting since 2014.
Yeah, less than 2 years.
Yeah, less than 2 years. Insanely inexperienced. And he's sloppy. Like, he wings a lot of wild shots. He's not defensively sound. He tends to put his head up on just like that and back straight up, trying to swing wild as he goes backwards. He's not an overwhelmingly aggressive force, but he's basically his record is composed mostly of beating guys that crush cans. Like those are most of his opponents. Is he's fighting these guys who come in with like a 9-0 record where they've fought absolutely no one, and he's the guy that beats them. And he's done it mostly because he's tougher than they are, and he's got good cardio, and he's a decent athlete. So he's able to just stay in there and draw out these prolonged brawls where eventually he's the guy that wins. And Cirkunov is not a pretty striker by any stretch of the imagination. He's wooden to a fault. Very heavy on his feet, very clunky. He has the idea of what the nuts and bolts of striking look like, but it's very much like, press button for left jab, press button for right straight. And thing is, though, is that he's, every other part of his game is just like super naturally gifted and talented. He's in a puncher's division, so I'm not saying Nicholson has no chance, but I think it's purely a puncher's chance, and I think Cirkunov is going to have very little trouble getting him to the clinch, and once he's in the clinch, he's going to wreck Nicholson's world.
Sure, yeah, Misha Cirkunov is obviously the pick here. he's well-rounded. His record speaks to that. He's got all kinds of finishes. He's got finishes both by knockout and by submission, some on the ground, some standing. He's a great clinch fighter. That first takedown he hit in that UFC debut against Daniel Johny, I don't even know what it was. It was like a cross-body hip block throw with the arm. So cool. And he's got that kind of thing that everyone's always celebrated Ronda Rousey for having from that judo background.
He is basically light heavyweight Ronda Rousey.
Sure, yeah. And this ability to have one or two or three takedowns for every single angle and movement of direction of movement. Very, very crafty with his takedown finishes. Great scrambler on the ground. He moves very, very lightly on the ground. Not the way you would expect a light heavyweight to move. He's obviously very strong. If you look at the guy's build, he's ridiculous. Like his back and chest are massive. The thing is Misha Cirkunov is still pretty inexperienced. And so I've already spoiled the fact that I'm picking him here. There's no suspense here, but I don't think we can overlook Alex Nicholson as a threat that easily, because I think he's the kind of fighter that is really dangerous for a prospect. Is not like the kind of guy, Alex Nicholson's not the kind of guy you bring in to get your prospect some experience. You know what I mean? He's the kind of guy you bring in and you realize you've made a mistake when you expected him to get your prospect some experience, because he is a brawler. And when I think of fighter styles, if I think of them as like an out fighter or a pressure fighter or a brawler, I don't think of like the wildness of their technique. And he certainly has that. But you can be a sloppy out fighter. You can be a sloppy pressure fighter or whatever. Brawling as a style for me is not so much about sloppiness. It's more about intent. And when you watch Nicholson fight, it is like all he cares about is hurting you when he's fighting you. He doesn't give a damn about being hit. He doesn't care about being taken down. He just cares about finishing you. And that's a pretty crazy mentality to face as an inexperienced fighter. So I got to give him a better puncher's chance than most, because he's very durable. And that's been against heavyweights too. I think he's been at heavyweight for his career up until now. He is a good athlete. He can take a hell of a beating. And he's just going to be like, he's like Alex White, but meaner, like he's just going to be throwing like spinning back fists and like just random nonsense. But every time you do something, his response is always going to be to try to hurt you back and more than you hurt him. So it'll be an interesting test for Misha Cirkunov. And if he passes it with flying colors, then I think it says a lot about his potential and his poise as a fighter.
Yeah, I will say this for Cirkunov. He hasn't had a lot of fights. He's had, because he's light heavyweight, and it's, especially in North America, it's really hard to get light heavyweight bouts booked. But he has been around for a while. Like, he's been around since 2010. So he is coming in as somebody who's spent a lot of time training and working on an MMA career.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's not, I don't know how much like where you'd peg that as experience is sort of
Right.
like a weird combination of inexperience and experience
Right.
because he has been in the gym a lot.
And I think training experience is not going to help you quite as much against a guy like Nicholson.
That could
He's the
be
kind
true.
of guy
Yeah.
who really shows up on the night of a fight, and like
Yep.
he could have the shittiest camp of his life and would just still be the same crazy motherfucker when he steps in the cage.
That is very true, and I'll be interested to see this, see what he can do here against Cirkunov. It should be a good fight. Hopefully, we see, you know, hopefully Nicholson can turn it into a brawl for a little while, win or lose.
Right. Well, I mean, like I say this, but it's not unlikely that Cirkunov like ragdolls him in the first round and submits him. That's perfectly likely.
Yeah.
But
It's
the
not like
chances,
Nicholson's some master of keeping range and is just going to absolutely be able to.
absolutely not. He's like gonna get taken down and be a goofy scrambler and all this stuff. He's gonna put himself in risk. But if Cirkunov doesn't finish him early, it becomes a really interesting fight.
Yeah, this is very true. Misha Cirkunov is the favorite, minus 750 up to minus 1100. Alex Nicholson, the underdog, plus 500 up to plus 702. And I'm not terribly dissatisfied with those odds. Yeah, it's fine.
Who cares?
There's a chance Nicholson could take this if he can turn it into like a 3-round just sloppy as hell war. But much more likely is that Cirkunov ragdolls him and takes his arm home.
Yeah.
All right, that brings us to Joseph Benavidez versus Zach Makovsky for the now not alpha mailed Benavidez in a fight that this is an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Take it away.
I don't think Benavidez has spent his whole camp leading up to this fight at elevation. They just announced his departure from Team Alpha Male before the bout. So maybe he's been there for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe he has been there the whole time and they've just been keeping it under wraps. I don't know. But either way, I doubt that one camp with Ludwig is enough to really change Benavidez that much. I think there were definite benefits when he was working with Ludwig last time that seemed to have kind of slowly gone away because Alpha Male's in this weird nebulous. It's just like a lacuna in terms of coaching ability. Like there's just no structure at that camp, and so it's just kind of been doing whatever. But Joseph Benavidez is in the Uriah Faber position right now, where in his division, yeah, it definitely feels like he's probably right on the cusp of a tragic downslide, but he's still better than everyone he fights. You know, like I can keep expecting Uriah Faber to have a major drop off, and I can keep saying that, okay, yeah, when he fights a Frankie Edgar or if he fights Dillashaw or Cruz, yeah, of course he will lose. But pretty much anyone else they match up against Faber is probably going to get beaten. He's still the crazy athletic scrambler. Like if as long as Joseph Benavidez can still scramble and stop takedowns, like, you know, not many people are going to beat him. John Moraga and Ali Bagatinov and Dustin Ortiz and Tim Elliott, last 4 wins are all very, very credible in this division. Very solid wins. And I think he's still good enough to beat Zach Makovsky. Makovsky is a good range striker. He's a fairly good counter puncher and counter kicker. He fights a lot like Machida from distance, and he is I interviewed him a long time ago, and he said that he models a lot of what he does on Machida, so you can see that in his style. Tries to walk you into things, and that carries over into his wrestling as well. He wants to walk you into a takedown and take you off your feet. He's a good scrambler as well, but he's kind of a reserved guy who waits for his openings, and he cannot contend with Benavidez in the pocket. If Benavidez can come forward and stand close to him and exchange combinations, he has the edge. If he can get it to the clinch, I think he's stronger. If it's on the ground, I've never seen anyone out scramble Joseph Benavidez. So it's just hard to see. You know, it could be the dropping off point, but I'm not about to predict it. And I think as long as Benavidez is the same Benavidez he's been for the last year, then he will win this one.
Yeah, I think I predicted that Moraga would, or not Moraga, but Bagatinov might beat Benavidez, might catch him with a single hard shot, and we would see the crack. But he didn't. Bagatinov was unable to put together enough offense to beat Benavidez in that fight. He just looked too gun shy and too uncomfortable.
And Benavidez didn't look amazing. He looked a little slower. He looked a little less polished, but he still looked like Joseph Benavidez, enough to get a pretty easy win.
Yeah, he still hits hard enough and has enough speed and is tricky enough to keep his opponents second guessing at all times.
Yeah.
And if they don't second guess, they usually get hurt badly enough that they're not willing to keep tangling.
And since he is obviously a smart, crafty fighter, he knows how to set things up, but just doesn't have like the refinement of technique all the time. I think that it could really be great for him to work with Ludwig again. He could have a final run at the title or a final great tear through this division with Ludwig, because he's a smart enough fighter that he can keep going into, old age by fighter terms and have success with that intelligence.
Yeah. And like he should just be like right nearing the end of his run. We shouldn't be necessarily there yet. He started in 2006, so it's not like, or like he might be about to hit it sometime in the next year or two. It's not necessarily like, oh no, he's absolutely there and we're seeing the cracks. And without seeing the cracks, seeing him maybe look a little slower, but not seeing just everything falling apart. Yeah, Makovsky's good, but it's always, I don't know. It's never quite good enough consistently, Like his striking will look really good in a fight, and then he'll face somebody who's actually a pretty good striker, and his striking isn't quite good enough for that fight.
Yeah.
Or his wrestling will look really good in a fight, and then he'll face somebody who's actually a good wrestler, and his wrestling won't be quite good enough for that fight. And it's just kind of the same thing every time. And I feel bad because I really like Makovsky a lot. He's also been fighting since 2006. So it's not exactly like he's going to be way behind Benavidez in terms of potential for slowing down.
Yeah. And in that time, Makovsky has lost to plenty of different people. It bears remembering that Joseph Benavidez has only lost to two men, Dominic Cruz and Demetrius Johnson, twice each. Not embarrassing names to have on your resume.
No. So I got to pick Benavidez just because I think he's still a little, probably a little faster, but he certainly hits harder. And especially, like I say, scrambling and grappling is often the last thing to start declining for things. Like you look at Faber and, in his fight, a lot of his fights, it's just like these days he'll be losing the stand-up portion, and then he'll actually get into a scramble, and suddenly he looks exactly like he always has.
Yeah.
And so I just don't think that Makovsky can outwork him there. I don't think he's ever quite been good enough to do that, So on that note, the odds for this fight, Makovsky is at plus 300 up to plus 389. Benavidez minus 418 up to minus 470. That feels long, but not too long. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard for me to see Makovsky winning. So even though I feel like he deserves more credit, the odds don't necessarily reflect the closeness of the fight. They reflect who is going to win. And so,
and Makovsky has one knockout, a TKO of Chad Robichaux at Bellator 41, and 5 submissions, all before 2011 on his record. So he's gonna have to win a decision here.
Yeah,
almost certainly, and that's really tough to do.
Yes.
On that note, that brings us to Ovince St. Preux, Rafael Cavalcante in a fight that is almost certainly not going to be going to a decision. And a fight that I gotta say, I'll watch it, and I'm not. I'll watch it, but man, I do not see anything out of Cavalcante that suggests to me that he is going to get anything other than murdered in this fight. He does not, speaking of the KJ Noon school of looking like you don't really want it anymore, Cavalcante is a guy that just looks like he is not interested in or invested in fighting anymore. And really, it's been the decline since he got busted for PEDs. Like, he hasn't looked physically like the same fighter, and he has not fought like the same fighter. Like there was a time when he was this shot stuffing, counter sprawling, brawling, power punching force of nature. And then he lost to Dan Henderson, and then he beat Mike Kyle and got that overturned for steroids, and has looked more like a sort of slightly out of shape uncle who has decided to continue his MMA career despite the better advice of his family. I was making the slightly out of shape uncle comparison for Rafael Cavalcante. And I don't see, like, OSP is the classic case of how far can you go on athleticism alone. Like, if you never get a great camp together and you never refine your technique, and you don't have one super deep skill set that you can always draw on, how far can being a great athlete take you in MMA? And OSP is sort of your answer. And I think it takes him past Cavalcante here.
OSP to me is Sage Northcutt. If Sage Northcutt was lucky enough to be fighting in a division as shallow as light heavyweight, like he's a great transitional fighter, a stupendous athlete, really strong, really powerful, really fast, scrambles fantastically well, innate senses of balance and timing. And then anytime he has to do something that is like a technical display, he just like runs out of ideas. He's like, oh, I don't know. It's like
Northcutt without even the karate background, too.
Yeah. Was he have a football background?
Yep.
You said before about Misha Cirkunov, like press the button for this. That's how I think of these non-technical fighters think of techniques. It's like, I'm going to throw the left hand, and you're like, oh, it's not working. What else do I do? Like, they don't have any notion of like all the different ways you can throw a left hand, and all the ways you can set it up, and all the subtle changes in angle and timing you can make. It's like, the left hand isn't working anymore. Try something crazier, and they'll go for a spinning kick or some stupid shit like that. So by that metric, I think Cavalcante is actually not a bad underdog here. Like, here's the thing. OSP is not going to be the crazy wrestler that Cavalcante has struggled with in his UFC career. He's not going to be Pat Cummins or Ryan Bader. He's an okay wrestler, but mostly OSP is a counter striker. Mostly he's at his best when he hangs back, he gives you space, and he beats you up with kicks from range, and then you realize, I can't keep taking these. He's like a really powerful Machida. You're like, okay, I got to rush in at him, and then you get hit. And Rafael Cavalcante can probably kick with him at range. And he can probably, if he has anything left of the guy who stuffed the takedowns of Yoel Romero, which I think is a fairly comparable fight to this one in terms of just like fighting a super athlete and beating them through patience and skill. If he has anything left of the guy who stopped those takedowns, or who stopped Dan Henderson's takedowns, or who stopped Mo Lawal's takedowns, then he might be able to make OSP kickbox with him. And that's a more dangerous fight than I think it seems at first. I do think it's kind of risky. Cavalcante has had stamina problems, but so has OSP. Like both these guys throw too hard and exhaust all of their energy. So I'm not saying I pick Cavalcante, but I think if you're going to go for one long shot underdog besides maybe Mike Jackson, like drop a few bucks on him, he's like plus 350. I don't think it's that bad. OSP by second round KO is my pick, but I do think there is a path to victory for Fei Zhao here.
Well, sure, when you hit as hard as he does, and you have some of the reasonable technique in the past as he has,
there's always a good defensive fighter too.
Yeah. The thing I think of, though, too, is I think back to that Thiago Silva fight in 2013, where he was beating the brakes off Thiago Silva, just absolutely shit kicking him. They just stopped. It was just like
tired. I mean, do you get the sense in that fight that that he knew he was in bad shape and thought he had to blow Thiago Silva up in the first few minutes?
Probably. We're talking he got tired in the after 3 minutes. We're not talking he got tired after a round and a half. He lost it at 4.5 minutes in after getting shit kicked for a minute or so.
Granted,
And
it was a good showing from Thiago Silva, who actually jabbed, who actually defended, who boxed and moved his feet. It was a better than average showing, probably the last decent showing from Thiago Silva. So
yeah, but it was just like the image it gives me is of a fighter who, even when he is winning and
yeah,
dominating, is just a massive liability.
yes,
Like, and he's not, and OSP is not Igor Prokryats, who's just going to go in there and brawl and sit right in front of him and say, okay, let's trade hard shot for hard shot. That is the type of fight that Cavalcante is still very capable of winning. OSP is going to wait on the outside, look for his moments, try and bait Cavalcante in with little strikes and things like that,
yes.
and then fire a hard shot and get out of the way again. And Cavalcante does not seem like he's the guy that wins even that, I can't trust him to win those fights. Like anything other than I will sit right in front of you and trade, pocket uppercuts with you, then I just don't see it.
Yeah, I definitely am not picking him to win. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it's OSP, but it's OSP again. Like OSP has these large gaps in technical acumen, and Feijão does not. He is a good technical fighter.
Yeah.
So there are ways for a veteran with power and technique and defense to exploit what OSP does.
OSP is somebody that has lost to Virgil Zwicker. This is true.
OSP is more durable too. That's definitely in his favor here.
Yeah.
Feijão has been knocked out 3-4 times.
Yeah.
OSP's been knocked out once, and it was by Virgil Zwicker way early in his career.
Yeah.
So he takes a punch well. It's just I just can't get the idea out of my head that like OSP is Sage Northcutt. OSP will continue because he's Sage Northcutt, but he's never made the decision to go to TriStar. You know what I mean? He's Sage Northcutt still at Gracie Baja, Katy, Texas for his whole career.
Yeah.
And so he's still going to have baffling losses as long as he stays in that situation.
But his baffling losses, I mean, recently it's Teixeira, Bader, Moose, and that's it.
Yeah, they've all been very credible. Yeah.
So I just don't see Cavalcante being that dude.
Yeah, me neither.
No. The odds on this are OSP is the favorite, -360 to -440. Cavalcante +363 down to +280. Might be worth, or 265 even, which that feels, I don't know. That feels close to me. The odds are fine, but at 363, Cavalcante might be worth a nickel on like Cavalcante wins by KO TKO is +425. So if he's going to win this fight, it's going to be because he lands a monster shot. There's no way he's winning a decision over OSP.
He could go for that crazy Mike Kyle guillotine again if OSP shoots on a sloppy takedown. But yeah, it's I think he's on this card. I think he strikes the best balance as an underdog between like crazy wide odds and a fairly reasonable path to victory. But it's, I'm not picking him to win. I think he's got a 20% chance maybe.
Yeah. Speaking of 20% chances, 20% chance of decision heavyweight fest. Actually, 100% chance. We're doing a weather forecast.
Not 100% for a decision?
For Roy Nelson, Jared Rosholt.
It's 100% chance it'll be weird.
It'll be weird. It's true. 100% chance of weirdness. Take it away.
Well, man, what do you say about these guys? Roy Nelson actually looked really good in that fight with Josh Barnett.
It did.
You have to hand it to him. He is still making efforts to improve. His counter wrestling was much better. He actually grappled. He threw some kicks. His boxing has been improving spottily, but we have been able to see notable improvements in his boxing game for the past couple of years.
He's no longer the guy that you just have to move to your right against, and there will be nothing waiting for you.
He does. He has like a shotgun jab when he throws it. It's very stiff. He seems to hit hard with both hands. It's just most of his career he's spent only throwing the right. And a decent left hook sometimes as well. It's not great, but by heavyweight standards, it's better than it was, and he still packs a huge wallop. He's also moves. He moves a little better than he used to. And I think actually the sneaky thing about Roy Nelson has always been how quickly he moves.
Mm-hmm.
He covers distance really, really fast for a guy who looks like a bowling ball. You know, he comes in low and sneaky, and you're watching his head, and then his right hand comes looping out from outside your field of vision. He's weird in that way. Jared Rosholt, boy, he like to get hurt by punches. You know,
It's true.
Again, I've been using this phrase a lot. Does this feel like a two true outcome fight to you?
Yeah,
It sure does.
pretty much.
It's Roy Nelson knocks out Jared Rosholt, or Rosholt just wrestles the hell out of Roy Nelson. I think that Roy Nelson is more likely to get his end of the bargain here. I think Rosholt is too hittable. He's very hittable and very uncomfortable in striking exchanges. He didn't look great in that fight with Stefan Struve, but Struve looked like he had no clue what he was doing. Nelson's not going to be shy about throwing his right hand. And if he's anything close to as confident in his counter wrestling as he was in the Josh Barnett fight, I think he can probably at least fight off a few takedowns, or at least not fear them enough that he can throw those punches. And he can go for more than a round now. If he's anything like the Josh Barnett fight still, that was a huge, crazy, active heavyweight fight. One of the most active heavyweight fights ever. And Nelson was still there. So that to me is a huge credit to him. If he can be around for more than the first round and still be a threat with that right hand, with Jared Rosholt as the target, I think he will hit him and KO him late in the first round.
It's true. I don't know. Like, I have this sneaking suspicion. Like, I remember picking Jared Rosholt against Stefan Struve, and having being surprised at how many people were like, "Nah, Struve's got this fight." And it's like, really? Does he? Really? Because he doesn't.
Yeah.
And like, the thing with heavyweight is just like how few elite wrestlers there are. Like, I cannot go back to this enough as to how few guys can actually chain together enough takedowns to get past an immediate shot stuffing.
Yeah.
Like, most guys get their first takedown stuffed, and they're like, "Oh shit! Well, we're cage grappling now," you know. And that's heavyweight wrestling by and large.
It's like Rosholt, and then for a little while it was Cormier, and who else is there? Like,
and
to the
Velasquez,
point,
and that's
yeah,
it.
yeah. Where we think of Josh Barnett as being a great wrestler for heavyweight. He's not really that amazing of a takedown artist. He's
a pretty poor takedown artist, in fact.
And we think of him as being one of the better wrestlers. Rosholt is miles beyond that.
And so I have this suspicion I feel like we're gonna get, Jared Rosholt's solid top 10 heavyweight talent for his whole career, just simply because he wrestles better than everyone else out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just going to be simply that. He's going to be a John Fitch for the UFC, where they will just be looking for the first excuse to get him out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that Roy Nelson is the dude to prove that wrong, Like, he does look better. And it could absolutely be like the Oleinik fight, where Rosholt, in that fight, Rosholt was trying to prove that he had some hands, and he was trying to show everybody his boxing, and he forgot just how dangerous a power puncher Oleinik is.
With Rosholt, just like Fitch, like, he's gonna be always underrated and always the underdog, because we know he gets hurt easily. Even in fights that he wins, he's really dull, and so he's always going to be picked against. But you know what really sticks out in my mind is that in that Stefan Struve fight, I picked Struve to win. I was a fool, one of the fools that you were chastising a moment ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked at how bad Struve looked. Like, even you probably expected him to show up more than that. But I was still shocked at how, underwhelming Jared Rosholt looked.
Well, he did break his leg, didn't he?
Did he? That makes a little more sense. I'm going to look that up.
I believe Jared Rosholt, broken leg, or maybe it was, they thought it was, and then maybe, am I wrong? I swear to God,
I didn't think he did. I thought he just kind of
I thought I could have swore there was something. Maybe it was like he said he broke his leg, and then he thought he broke his leg, and then afterward it turned out he didn't, or something.
Are you thinking of Chaz Skelly? Did he have something like that?
No, it was specifically in that Struve fight. I remember.
I can't find anything on it.
No, shit. What am I swear to God, Oh, well. I mean, he's back already, so he couldn't have.
Right. Well, either way, like his chain takedowns they looked good. He got the nice high crotch lifts,
Yep.
worked from his singles and with double leg finishes, and he had layers to that. But everything else looked worse than it had ever been.
Yeah.
He was more tentative than ever before, and I don't know, man.
It's true. Like I don't think that he is a like. I mean, he's never gonna be that guy that's like exciting to fans in any way, or even analysts. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think he's never gonna be like an analyst's dream. But I just have this feeling that division is just so like that skill is so unique to that division that it will almost always be enough. It will never be enough to make him champ. It'll never be enough to make him a consistent top 5 fighter, but it might always be enough to make him a top 10 fighter.
You may be right.
Know? If he gets knocked out here, I will be absolutely unsurprised. Absolutely. But I'm picking Rosholt to win another god-awful boring decision.
You got me last time. You can be the Rosholt advocate for the show, and I'll be the Ryan Bader advocate.
And the Overeem advocate. That's where we really. Sure. Hey, we were both right on Rothwell, though. I'm happy about that. We both.
No. Right I think I picked Barnett.
Oh, did you pick Barnett?
Yeah.
Well, I was right on Rothwell then.
Yeah, I abandoned my place as Ben Rothwell advocate on that one at the wrong time.
That's right. I was on. I was Rothwell because I said that Barnett just has not beat good enough fighters lately for me to trust that he's actually an elite heavyweight.
And that may be true of Roy Nelson as well.
It may be true of Roy Nelson as well. Odds on this: Roy Nelson is the favorite, -157 to -165. Rosholt, the underdog, +125 up to +143. I don't know that he's worth anything at those odds. They're pretty short.
Yeah.
Rosholt by decision, +195 and getting shorter. So everybody figured that out too.
Yeah. That's not a hard one to go for.
Yeah.
Rosholt by KO, just for funsies. What are the odds on Rosholt by KO?
Rosholt by TKO KO +750.
I have +835.
Even +800. Any other result than Rosholt by KO TKO is -1580.
-1735 for me.
That is delicious. If you pick anything happens other than Rosholt getting a KO, you're at like 15 to 1 odd, or like 1 to 15 odds.
Oh man.
Okay. And that brings us to our final fight. Johny Hendricks, Stephen Thompson. And this is a great fight. Like, I like this fight because is it my turn to go first? I feel like so. Yeah. Hendricks is both. I don't even know that he's underrated in any area anymore, but he's certainly an overrated wrestler. And he's not a bad wrestler when I say that. He's a great takedown artist. Powerful, good selection, does all the right things, but he is in no way a finisher as a takedown artist. Mm-hmm. He is a get you down, stay on you and blanket you until the ref stands you up, or he decides to stand up, and then until he creates some space for ground and pound and you stand up.
Yeah.
And then rinse and repeat.
He's really more dangerous in the clinch before he gets the takedown.
Yeah, he's a much more dangerous clinch fighter, and he's a much more dangerous fighter as you're trying to stand up from the ground. He's sort of in that alpha male mode without the submissions, where he takes you down and then it's like, okay, I'm going to let you up, and if you try to stand up, I'm going to put a hand on your head and punch you in the face a bunch. That tends to be how his his takedown game works. And so I don't think he's just going to utterly overwhelm Thompson as a wrestling force in this fight. I mean, he did a good job of it in the Matt Brown fight of just rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, figuring out that he didn't really want to try to stay outside with Brown, and he might as well just take him down. But it was also not a fight that, like, I mean, Brown lost, but it wasn't like Brown got beat up. It just ended up being kind of Johny Hendricks taking points and taking rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And Thompson, for his flaws, is a bit more of an evolved range fighter than Brown. He's a much better fighter at distance.
He's more dynamic a range fighter, definitely.
Yeah. He's a much more dynamic range fighter. He's much better at maintaining distance and keeping distance and finding it. And I wonder if because of that, because Brown obviously wanted the clinch, so he was happy to give Hendricks the opportunities that would allow Brown to be taken down. That was just the nature of the game they were playing. Brown was always going to end up on his back a bunch because he wants Hendricks in the clinch, and Hendricks is happy to give him that because he's more powerful and has a better chain wrestling game from there. And if Thompson's not going to give Hendricks that, I wonder how much Hendricks is going to get sucked into a kickboxing game, because he's very happy to kickbox. He's very happy to try and be a pocket kickboxer and to play that game. And as such, I'm not saying Thompson's going to win, but I wonder if this isn't going to be a much better fight than people think it's going to be. I'm picking Hendricks because he has the ability to take large portions of rounds, just taking top control, getting a takedown, getting top control. And because he's a dangerous enough combination kickboxer to compete with Thompson. But I thinking about it now, I also wonder how much does Hendricks' game on his feet mimic mimic Robert Whittaker's stand-up game. Like, not like exactly point to point, but is like a power willing pocket kickboxer who, does a pretty decent job chaining his hands and feet together.
Much more of a kicker than Whittaker, I think.
Yeah, much more of a kicker than Whittaker. And because of that, I think a lesser chance of just running straight into a sharp counter combination coming in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see options for Thompson here. I see ways for Thompson to take a very surprising decision by being elusive on the outside and forcing Hendricks to chase him in a kickboxing bout.
Sure.
And I'm picking Hendricks to win it because he's a surprisingly deft kickboxer. He's especially a surprisingly ambidextrous kickboxer. Like, he can really square up and throw good combinations with each hand.
And with each leg,
And with each leg.
The leg kicks he was landing on Robbie Lawler in their rematch were pretty phenomenal. Just switching inside, outside, taking angles, setting him up with the hands. His jab has gotten steadily better since the GSP fight. And his right hook, his combination punching. I don't want to take over. I'll let you finish, but
end thing is, Thompson has great ring craft. That's his most underrated asset, is that he really knows and has a command of the cage and how to move and where to move and when. So I could see him making this a really tough fight on Hendricks, but I'm taking Hendricks by decision.
Yeah, there are a lot of interesting factors here. I agree. I basically with you every step of the way. I would actually be kind of surprised if Johny Hendricks was easily able to out-wrestle Stephen Thompson. He's certainly going to be much stronger when they get in the clinch, but Stephen Thompson's going to be really difficult to get to that range. And I don't think he has any delusions about trying to clinch with anyone. He learned that lesson in the Matt Brown fight. He knows where his range is, and he sticks to it as often as possible. When he does get clinched, he bides his time. He looks for the first opening and slips back out and starts kickboxing from range again. So I don't think that Johny Hendricks will constantly be able to get Stephen Thompson into the clinch and on the ground. I'd be surprised. But I also think Johny Hendricks is a really good striker. He's, like you said, surprisingly good. For a while there, it seemed like maybe he was abandoning his wrestling roots and kind of losing track. But, credit to him and to his coach, Stephen Wright. Like, he has turned into one of the better kickboxers in this division. And it's a deep division. He's got pretty good defense. He counters well. He throws punches with both hands from a lot of angles. He'll even throw counter knees and things like that to try and stop people coming in low. Great kicker to the body and the legs, from both legs. And of course, he is durable as hell. He is tough as a boiled boot. So you can't really hurt him even when his defense starts to falter. And he's very focused and knows how to respond when he starts to get hurt. So he's really dangerous to strike with. And I think as he continues to improve, if you watched the countdown episode for this, he seemed like he really knew what he was talking about when he was talking about the range he's going to have to keep with Stephen Thompson. He's like, hey, well, I'm going to be here and I can take a half step back or a half step forward. I want to be right in this range and I want to control it. Like, he's got an idea in his head of how to control the distance and not let Stephen Thompson have the range he wants. And I think he can do that. I think you give Johny Hendricks has been so weirdly underrated because he's not very likable. He's really cocky and he has excuses for when he loses. But you have 3 split decisions, all of which could have gone the other way, and maybe all of which should have gone the other way to Johny Hendricks, and he's undefeated and he's the welterweight champion. He should have beat Robbie Lawler last time. Nobody cared because nobody likes Johny Hendricks, but he should have beaten Robbie Lawler last time. And he probably should have beaten him or gotten a draw with him the first time. And he probably should have beaten or gotten a draw with GSP. So, this guy has competed with the very best welterweights in the world. He's so good. And people just don't see it.
Yeah.
And he also has this bizarre reputation now as a guy who doesn't make weight and doesn't show up for fights. He's never not made weight. He struggled to make weight a couple times. His last fight, he had to go to the hospital because he did make weight. And he actually looked like he was, just like in the Matt Brown fight, really taking his nutrition seriously and seemed to suffer adverse effects from years of not taking it seriously.
Yeah.
Where he had kidney issues and stuff like that. But he seems to be much more disciplined now. So I don't know. I am interested to see how he looks now that he's no longer with Team Takedown. It's he and Stephen Wright and Tony Caballo, I think his name is. And I don't know who's doing his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu now. So there might be some notable changes, but still, I think even if he can't get Stephen Thompson down, I think he can win a fairly close fight with him. Or what I kind of think I see happening is him working Thompson's legs, wearing him down, and then getting him down late into the fight and mauling him there. Because we've never seen Thompson go into late rounds. Last time he went in a back and forth fight to the third round was with Matt Brown, and he was getting beaten up by the end of that fight. And I think I could see something similar here because Hendricks is a brutal infighter and a brutal top position player when he does get the chance. So I think I'll say Hendricks by 3rd or 4th round TKO.
I think, yeah, I could easily see him knocking. Yeah, I don't know.
Like a stoppage. I don't think he's gonna knock his head off. I'd love to see that Johny Hendricks come back. I'd love to see him get a big knockout. Yeah. But I think he'll probably have a tired and battered Stephen Thompson in the late rounds of the fight.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know if we'll see Stephen Thompson get stopped or not. He's certainly, he hasn't shown a bad chin, and he's young enough that. Or early enough in his career that could just be something that's still holding up strong. But I'm taking Hendricks by decision just because he's got too many tools to his game, and he's competitive enough where Thompson is best that I don't see Thompson just blowing him out of the water. But I do think it will be a much more interesting fight than people seem to think it will be.
Yeah, and I would not be shocked if Stephen Thompson outboxed Johny Hendricks and won. He can do that. He's very good, and he has really surpassed expectations since that first loss to Matt Brown. But it just bears keeping in mind. Johny Hendricks himself pointed this out on the countdown. He was saying how since basically in the past 3 years, he's never faced anyone outside the top 5. Stephen Thompson's the first non-top 5 heavyweight, and he has performed very, very well in all of those performances and arguably won every single one of them. So he's really good. Johny Hendricks is really, really good at this.
Yep. Not likable, but good. Much better fighter than Steakhouse Manager.
Yes. Not a very good steakhouse manager. Great steakhouse customer, though. You run a steakhouse and you got Johny Hendricks in your neighborhood, you can bankroll that one. Definitely.
There you go. Hendricks is the favorite, minus 205 up to minus 240, or 250 actually, and Stephen Thompson, the underdog, plus 200 down to plus 160. I think those odds are pretty good. I think maybe they're a little short on Hendricks, but I like that Thompson's ring craft is perpetually underrated, and so I like to see him closer here because people don't realize how good he is at understanding his distance and his range and maintaining it and keeping his back off the cage and keeping himself in the space he needs to work. Thompson is much, much better at that than most fighters.
Yeah, and a good wrestler as well. He works with good wrestlers. It's not like he needs to keep you at range to stop takedowns. He knows what he's doing in the clinch.
Yeah. All right. On that note, we got anything else to close up with?
I think there's some good bets on this card. I think Sean Spencer is a good favorite bet. I do think Fejao is maybe worth a couple dimes as an underdog. Noad Lahat is really not a bad bet despite being fairly long odds. I think he's pretty much guaranteed to win that fight. And other than that, this is like a great, if you don't have anything else to do or if you want to catch it up on Sunday afternoon, this is a fantastic card for that. The pacing will be the problem. So this is probably the ideal DVR card where you can skip the commercials and watch it the night after.
Especially too, because you will be able to maybe, if you don't care too much about spoilers, you'll be able to find out what fights were actually good or not, and then go watch those.
Yeah.
Because this could very easily have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 8 or 9 fights that are just boring and a drag. Like it could. I'm not saying they will, but there are a lot of fights here where you've got some funky style matchups and some guys who would be very willing to grind out a win if they need to.
Yeah.
So on that note, thanks everyone for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush. That's BUSCH. Give us a like over on YouTube. That's a thumbs up. That helps us a bunch. Subscribe to MMANation.com. That's DOTCOM over on YouTube. That way you're always the first one to get to know about all these videos and stuff that we do. Head on over to Bloody Elbow. You can read us both there. We will have, I'll be doing a prospectus this week. And then we'll have 6th round and knuckle up and all the other stuff going for next week and all that. I don't think there's a fight card next week, if I'm remembering correctly. Cerrone, yeah, there's a 1 week break before we get to what is now Cowboy. Cowboy off.
And as someone suggested to me on Twitter, the winner of this fight gets to be called Cow Man from now on.
Cow Man, that's right.
The official Cow Man of the division.
That I like that better than losing your cowboy nickname.
Yes, you elevate beyond cowboy.
Because truth be told, Alex Oliveira, between the two of them, he's a much, much more legit cowboy.
Yeah, he's an actual cowboy.
Yeah, Donald Cerrone's just a dude who likes to ride 4-wheelers.
He's a dude who likes Budweiser and hats. Like, he's not a real cowboy.
No. All right. On that note, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time.